How's everybody doing today?
Well, thank you.
Morning.
What
Morning.
what a day for you guys today, in the way that now your words on a page are in front of people out here in the everyday world. What is that transition like for you?
It's a little surreal because we've been in our little, well, not only we've been in our COVID bubble, but we've been in our writing bubble. And now people are sending us pictures of stacks of them in bookstores and things like that. It's a bizarre feeling.
You cover a very heavy subject inside these pages. Heavy in the way, maybe because I can relate with it. My wife actually was a school teacher. She's now retired. But this is something that they had to face every day.
What specifically do you mean? What did they have to face?
In other words, I mean, what they had to face, the basically the empathy, the compassion. You have got to understand the languages of all people and not just the people you want to teach.
Right. Well, I hope we want to teach everyone who's there, and that's part of the issue, is that sometimes we're not aware of the ways that we feel resistance to some of our students and some of our colleagues. So we want to be able to make sure that we're reaching everyone, because nobody goes into education trying to harm people. We're there to help. So we want to make sure we're helping everyone.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, though, is that a lot of teachers did not go through the educational system doing what you guys are speaking about inside this book. And that's why this book is so important to get into the hands of the educators as well as the parents.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what Jenna and I wanted to do, is we wanted to write the book that we wish we had had when we started teaching. And I do think the vast majority of programs that are preparing teachers, they may have one or two classes that sort of talk about diversity in general, but they may not have something that specifically talks about race, given the history of racism in this country, and a way of really thinking about how their racial identity can show up on a daily basis, right? I think we often think of these conversations, and you said they feel heavy, and certainly instances of racism that are happening, right? That is horrible, and they are heavy. But there's also a lot of other things that happen that I think teachers are unaware of that they're doing, that are sort of small moments, sort of not conscious, not really thinking about what's happening, where students may feel like a part of their identity is not accepted, is not okay in the classroom. And that's really who we wanted to write the book for.
Does the average parent understand what critical race theory is? It almost feels like that we're in a moment of self-interpretation.
Yeah, well, that's not by accident, that's by design. So there's been a lot of money and organization to create this fear around this idea of critical race theory. And actually, critical race theory in its purest form is not being taught, but now it's been co-opted to mean having anything to do with race, right? So instilling fear that talking about race is somehow going to make people racist, or that it's going to make people feel guilty or ashamed. And really, I wish they would teach critical race theory in schools, because what we end up thinking without understanding systems, which is what critical race theory actually helps us to understand, that racism is a system, that without that understanding, it becomes about individual efforts or deficits. So for example, honors and AP classes tend to be over enrolled with white students and very low representation of Black and brown students. Well, that's not because there is something inherently brilliant in white people, or inherently broken or not brilliant in Black and brown people. It has nothing to do with melanin. We know that there's actually a system that was created that has created the situation, not the other way around. So looking at systems rather than individuals as beyond their efforts or their deficits, so-called, in schools.
One of the things that many teachers face, and only because my wife did, and that is that she was asked in public, do you feel privileged? My wife is Jewish. She has a background. She comes from that Jewish background. No, she did not feel privileged because she has white skin. That a lot of teachers are in that same boat. You have no idea what the true story is about those that are teaching, but yet you feel like they have to fit into a mold.
Well, I think it's an interesting question, this notion of privilege, because I think the word sometimes makes people think about stuff that they get that's been given to them, right? Something just that you get just because of who you are. And we don't often think about it as all the things we don't have to deal with, right? Given a certain aspect of our identity. I also think it's interesting, especially for your wife, considering that she identifies as Jewish and she's I would assume, very familiar with anti-Semitism. I think we get confused sometimes, or I think people want to sort of, either say, well, because I experienced this form of discrimination, I want that recognized. And I think we have to realize that we can recognize that, but we also can recognize other places where maybe we didn't have to face those kinds of hurdles and obstacles. It doesn't take anything away from your wife's experience. We just try to make it a little more complex. It's the same thing of me thinking about for my gender identity. Certainly as a woman, I've experienced issues of sexism, but it doesn't change the fact that my whiteness and growing up white has also afforded me a bunch of obstacles that I didn't have to jump over because of my race. And I think those two things can exist at the same time. And I think a lot of times in our society, we want it to be either or. It has to be one thing or the other. And one thing we're trying to argue for is all those things can be true, so that folks can recognize the fullness of your wife's experience, which was what all teachers want.
Don't you see this book as being a tool in the way that, we're about ready to jump into a brand new school year. The teachers are not showing up. They don't want to come back. I read an article yesterday. A man took a job at Walmart because he didn't want to handle what was going on in his educational system. And it's like, wait a second, we need you as an educator. And books like this really do pave a path.
Yeah, I think because none of us were given these tools, or very few of us in our teacher prep programs, we weren't taught how to have these conversations. And it's very much on the minds of our students. And whether or not we bring it up or not, they are aware of it and it's coming forward, right? Race and racism show up to school every day, whether or not we talk about it. And so I think without preparation, without having been given the support and tools we need as educators, many of us opt out, right? Either opt out of talking about it or opt out of the profession altogether. And I know when I was a teacher, I was sort of tying myself in knots and doing gymnastics and doing all kinds of things to not talk about race, to make sure that nobody would perceive me as being racist. And so what we hear from teachers across the country is that the book and our work, we have a podcast as well, that it helps pave a way, helps give teachers some tools that they need that actually makes their jobs easier and gives them the confidence they need to show up and have these conversations that students are asking to have.
I am so glad that you talked about your podcast, because that's what teachers need to be listening to while they're driving into their classroom, because you guys are an open book. You're an open door to so many different things that they face every day. And one of them is, and maybe it's because I'm in the South, but when an African-American child looks at a white teacher and says, I don't have to listen to you. My mom said so. And doesn't this book open the door for everybody to have a conversation?
Yes. I think in that situation, when I think about that African-American student, who majority of those students don't have teachers who look like them, right? And what does it mean to consistently not be showing up in classrooms where your teacher doesn't look like you? Because we do know the research about that, how important it is. And so we hope this can help white teachers who are working with both white students and students of color, right? To be more present, to have more tools, to be open and ready to have these conversations, and can be really aware of, given their experiences and how they were raised, how are they approaching certain students? Do some students make them more uncomfortable than others, right? So we really want to empower teachers to be in a place to be able to lead these conversations, so those students aren't having to fight to be seen, to be understood, and to have the same kind of achievement as their as everybody else who's showing up there. So I do think we use case studies, we have reflection questions, we have lots of resources, both on via our website, Teaching While White, where we house both the podcast, and we also have a blog for teachers. So we hope there's lots of ways that if teachers have not been able to have these conversations or don't feel well supported or well prepared, we hope we can put things in their hands that they could use right when the school year starts.
How did you feel when Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. said that this is a personal exploration of self and system? My God, that's a language that so many people need to understand.
Yeah, no, it was a lovely, heartwarming comment to read. And that is really what we try to do in the book is we toggle between the individual and the systemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the system is made up of individuals. And if we aren't aware of the ways that we're showing up, then we're probably going to reinforce and support inequitable practices. And similarly, if we only focus on ourselves and we don't look at systems, then we're only helping a limited range of people within our immediate circle. So we want to be doing both at the same time. And so we really try to look at both in the book.
I know what it's like to be with adult students because I teach the adults that are anywhere between 18 and 65. I know that their focus is not there. And I'm afraid of our future. What about you? Are you afraid that the educators are not going to be there 100%? In fact, no, let's go even further. 200%, because that's what everybody wants teachers to be, 200%, and it has to come out of their pocket.
Well, I'm excited. Like you, I have the chance to teach older students. I work in a graduate school, and I'm teaching folks who are current teachers and folks who want to be leaders. And I actually have a lot of hope in this moment. I feel like there's a lot of folks, given everything that we've been through, that really want to turn around the education system. They realize in many ways it's not working. And so they're fired up in some way. So I'm seeing sort of an exciting trend coming forward. And I think those folks really see this as the opportunity because of everything that we've been through to make some real changes that have needed to happen. I also find that the students that we work with, oftentimes we work with elementary school students, middle and high school students, and they want to heal the world. I mean, they see where the issues are and they want to get busy and they want to fix things. And they just want adults in their lives who will provide spaces for them to have important conversations, give them accurate information, right? Not try to censor or hide things or pretend like, things didn't happen, but just say, this has been the history. This has been current situation. How does this connect with your experience? How do you want to be in the world, right? And what changes do you want to make? So it probably seems a little unusual, but I'm really excited about the future of education. I feel like we have a real opportunity to make some great changes.
Oh, and this book, like I said, is an open door. You got to keep in touch with me because what you guys are spreading is a word that needs to be heard well beyond the pages and well beyond your personal podcast. I mean, the door is always going to be open for you guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
You guys be brilliant today, and really, seriously, we need to talk more often.
Great. Anytime.
Great. Thank you.